newsroom. We'll continue, obviously, to follow that story as it develops. In the past, Barack Obama has been accused of compromising too easily with opponents. Well, days ahead of his inauguration for a second term, he's thrown down the gauntlet.
It's time for Congress to require a universal background check for anyone trying to buy a gun.
That's just one of the measures that was announced by the U.S. President Obama, challenging not only Congress, but powerful pro-gun lobbying groups like the National Rifle Association, proposing an end to high-capacity ammunition clips, tougher laws to reduce gun trafficking. There's a mix of 23 executive orders and legislation that he'll be sending to Capitol Hill. Never have Americans been more in favor of tighter gun control, say several polls in the wake of the shooting spree last month in Newtown, Connecticut, where the dead included 20 elementary school children. Already, though, opponents of the bills are getting their message out. The Vice President himself admits it'll be an uphill battle. And while Northeast liberal New York State approved its toughest gun control bill yet on Tuesday, it's unclear how much of that momentum will carry over to Washington, where, let's not forget, lawmakers already have a lot of political capital to spend in the upcoming budget deficit battle. Today, in the France 24 debate, we're looking at the showdown over gun control. And joining us is Anne Bagamary, senior editor at the International Herald Tribune. From Yorktown, New York, that's a suburb of New York City, Republican State Assemblyman Steve Katz, thank you for being with us. I want to thank attorney Frederick T. Davis, member of the French-American Foundation and of Democrats Abroad. Also with us, Atlantico.fr's Gérald Olivier, author recently in French, so far I suppose, of Mitt Romney for the Renewal of the American Myth. The France 24 debate, where you can always join the conversation on Facebook and Twitter, our hashtag F24Debate. Now, Anne Bagamary, the measures at hand. Barack Obama, how far did he go?
I think he went pretty far. Farther than I ever expected he would go, and faster. I mean, as the president pointed out in his remarks, it's only been 33 days since Newtown. And as you may recall, Francois, we were together on the plateau as the story was unfolding. And the feeling at the time, of course, was shock and horror, but also a certain resignation that America was not ready to truly embrace any kind of significant gun control reform. 33 days later, you've seen a president come out and not only use the power of his office to put forth 23 executive orders, which will have some effect, but also wave a pretty big stick in the direction of Congress to approve what, if you are in favor of limiting guns, look like pretty moderate measures that probably have quite a wide backing, even among advocates of gun ownership. Banning assault weapons, limiting the sale of multiple shot magazines, all of those two things, and requiring background checks. The background check is one of the things that even Republicans, I mean, you say 70% of the National Rifle Association members are in favor of that. That's what the polls are all showing. So he's picked some very middle-of-the-road but sensible measures to stake his claim for gun control. I wouldn't have said this 30 days ago, but then I wouldn't have expected to see anything quite like this much progress made.
Fred Davis, you're a former federal prosecutor in New York. Your son is a prosecutor in California.
Defense counsel.
Defense counsel, excuse me, he's on the other side.
Right.
What do you think, especially with the proposal for a ban on assault weapons that he's put forth to Congress? How far has Barack Obama gone?
Well, I agree. I agree that it's pretty good. I mean, it is a bit further than I had thought. It's going to be a long haul in two respects. First, it's going to be an uphill battle, as the Vice President said, to get this through Congress intact. I'm sure there'll be some horse trading. I'll be happy if all of it gets through. And then, very frankly, it'll take years for it to have any impact on the society. There are estimates of 250 to 300 million guns out there right now. Those are not going to come sweeping back in. This has to be viewed as part of I hope, a pivoting or a change towards enforcement of gun laws generally over the long haul. It's not going to happen overnight.
Steve Katz, the bill that was passed in the New York State Assembly on Tuesday, is it at the crest of a wave? And what are your thoughts on that bill?
Well, My thoughts on the bill are that, first of all, we've seen study after study, including the latest Harvard University study, that shows that essentially it's not the number of guns, it's not the guns themselves that are causing the problem. What we have and what we're trying to do much more of in New York is to confront the problem of mental illness. Every one of the horrendous episodes that we've seen over the last 3 years has been perpetrated by someone with a severe mental illness. Background checks, I don't think there's anyone who disagrees with the background checks. I am the ranking member of the Mental Health Committee in the New York State Assembly, and I can tell you that we will aggressively pursue further proactive measures towards protecting our citizenship from the people who do suffer from severe mental conditions that can be a prelude to some of these horrendous acts. But it is not the assault weapons that are causing this. I will remind you that there's a shifting definition of assault weapons. The original definition, which came out in 1994 under President Clinton, had them be any fully automatic weapons, which means when you pull the trigger, you get a spray of bullets. That is not what we are talking about now. Semi-automatic weapons, which had not previously been considered automatic assault weapons, you have to pull the trigger, it fires the bullet, it kicks out the shell, puts another bullet in the round, then you have to pull the trigger again. So I am, as we have seen in this country, on every level, not only do the studies show that that assault weapon and no assault weapon, it does not have any effect on the amount of crime or murders or violent acts that we see. It is essentially the people with mental illness that are causing this problem. As a matter of fact, I will give you an example here in Putnam County, which is one of the counties which I serve, which has in the state of New York the highest number per capita of legal gun owners, is also, by every one of the state parameters and studies, the safest county in the state. Right, so you go figure that out.
Nonetheless, on Tuesday, the New York State Assembly did vote in favor of it by a wide margin, 104 to 43, with a tough assault weapons ban and provisions to try to keep guns out of the hands of the mentally ill.
I'm proud to be a New Yorker because New York is doing something, because we are fighting back, because yes, we've had tragedies, and yes, we've had too many innocent people lose their life, and yes, it's unfortunate that it took those tragedies to get us to this point, but let's at least learn from what's happened. Let's at least be able to say to people, yes, we went through terrible situations, but we saw, we learned, we responded, and we acted, and we're doing something about it. We are not victims.
Frederick Davis, you heard there what Steve Katz had to say about disassociating different problems here. What do you think of that bill in New York State?
I think that the clamping down on the sale of weapons that are anything other than to be used for hunting or clear self-protection is a very good thing. I'm a little bit less sure about the obligation of public authorities to bring individual people who may have mental issues to the attention of the authorities. I think there are grave limits. I think that saying that we will take care of people with mental instability and that'll make the problem go away strikes me as a total non-starter for a number of reasons. One is that there's civil liberties out there. It's very hard to say to someone, I don't like the way you look, or you look like a loner to me, namely the profile of the people in Newtown, Aurora, and elsewhere, and put them in a different category. And the bottom line is there's just too many guns out there that have no real purpose other than to be available to people who want to shoot somebody. And there has to be a rigorous and sustained effort to get rid of them.
Gérald Olivier, we're preparing for the show. We saw that shooting sprees from Columbine until 2011 in the United States, there were 4 major ones. In 2012 alone, there were 7.
7, absolutely. Yeah, we have to really define what we're trying to solve and what we're looking at, because if we're simply thinking of mass shooting, what the president proposed a few moments ago may actually help, since these murders tend to be the ones that are perpetrated by assault weapons. If, however, we're looking at general crime, and just let's remind everyone that last year, 12,000 people in the US died of violent crime. If we're looking at this, then the assault weapons ban will be of no effect, because of those 12,000, only 200 died out of an assault weapon. The other died out of a regular gun or a handgun or something that people would still be allowed to have at home or even at their hip after this bill is passed. So that's the first thing we really have to look at, is what kind of a problem we're trying to solve. As far as the mentally ill are concerned, weapons are already out of their hands. No one has ever tried or even pretended to say that they should have free access to them. Since 1968, there's been a law that prevents them from having access to those weapons. But the point is that in the case of Sandy Hook and in the case of other mass shooting, they obtained the weapons from their parents or from a friend or not from any legal way. So what the bill would do is not going to change anything that is not already in effect.
And that was the point made, though, by the governor of New York State. Where do you start?
Yeah, you have to look here at maybe the political side of the issue. He moved very fast. President Obama moved fast. There is still, the emotions are riding very high in the U.S. because of what happened in Newtown last month. And it was very important for politicians to appear to be doing something about the issue. And that may also explain why New York State moved so fast to do something about it. But that mental illness focus personally puts me slightly ill at ease, because that's really not where the problem is.
All right. The differentiation, you say, talking about assault weapons, very few U.S. states have bans on them. And that's what triggered Tuesday, demonstration near the site of the Newtown shooting outside a Walmart. Among the protesters, a former aide to Arizona Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords, who, like Giffords, was shot in Tucson 2 years ago in a shooting spree.
Loeffner, the man that shot me on January 8th, was able to go into a Walmart and buy high-capacity magazines that were able to deliver 30 shots in less than 30 seconds. In less than 30 seconds, he was able to kill 16 people and wound 13 others. He could have killed 30 people in 30 seconds. And it's not controlled at all.
In the Illinois Times, Chris Britt penning a cartoon that shows a hunter returning home with his kill. And there you see him saying, got my deer. And the wife saying, well, perhaps we should stop using the assault weapons for that. It's just so hard, Steve Katz, to understand how there could be so many assault weapons in the U.S. when you're looking at the problem from this side of the Atlantic. How do you explain it?
Well, here's in the United States we have a culture of the freedom to possess and carry weapons. I can't answer culturally for that. I can tell you that in New York, the issues that I see is, number one, this bill does not address illegal weapons whatsoever. Last year, we had 789 murders. Out of those murders, 5 of them were with long guns, okay? Out of those, 30 murders were with blunt weapons, such as a bat or a hammer. One of the problems that we do see that we are going to be working on, and this bill does address to a point, is that if you have perpetrated a murder or a violent crime with an illegal weapon, you will be put in jail for a lot longer than you were before. Remember, in Webster, New York, the man who killed 2 firemen with an illegal assault weapon, had killed his grandmother 17 years previously using a hammer. And he got 17 years, and he came out, and 17 years later, he killed 2 more people.
All right, so what are you saying? That
one of the issues
it sounds like you're a bit fatalistic about assault weapons, that they're not the problem, in other words.
In other words, statistically, they're not. It's not assault weapons that are the problem. First of all, up until now, we've been using that word assault weapons in a way that is absolutely incorrect, because the definition up till now, until you want to change that definition, has been automatic weapons, which has been illegal for civilian use since 1994.
As you were saying, that's changed. Anne Bagger-Murray, your reaction?
My reaction is that I guess I would have to echo what the president said. This is a complex problem. We need to fight it on all fronts. And there is legislation proposed to help strengthen treatment and identification for the mentally ill. There's a couple of executive orders, I believe, that also address that. So I don't think this is an administration that's saying we do one thing and it's all solved. I think the president was pretty clear about that. But I also think that it's important not to get too bogged down in statistics and in very, very small-grained arguments about this. It is a complex problem, and it's not going to be solved overnight. And as the president said, just because it's hard to do doesn't mean we can't try. Just because maybe banning these kinds of automatic weapons in the large magazine, the kinds of bullets that can shoot a lot of people, okay? Banning those may not solve all of the problems, but it's certainly going to solve some of them. It's certainly going to prevent some of the incidents that we've seen. And why not do that?
And I think there are reasons to believe that legislation can make a difference. You look at Australia, which is in many ways very similar to the United States. It's a country that has a frontier history. People like guns. They like to hunt. They're outdoorsy people. They had a number of mass murders in the 90s, and they adopted legislation. Yeah. And the statistics shows an astonishing reaction. The number of mass murders went down to close to 0, and overall gun violence went down. Yeah. Now, there are many differences. It's a smaller country, but legislation does help.
All right, so we can argue about what's right and wrong. We can also argue about what's going to actually pass in Washington. We'll do so when the France 24 debate returns.
They can go over the border and buy anything anyway. So, really, if it's not all the states, why even bother? These people go out of their way to retrieve anything that they really have to.
I would hope that they'd start passing them throughout the United States. I think look at just here what happened in this beautiful town. I don't think assault weapons are needed.